Thank you for joining us on This Week in Turkey. I am Murat Türsan. Tonight, mob boss Sedat Peker is airing the government's dirty laundry again, and Edgar Şar will be with us for analysis. In the economy, power and gas prices are up again. Residents of a district in Istanbul are being kicked out, and a father finally receives his son's remains in a heartbreaking story. But our main story tonight, Sedat Peker, mob boss, whistleblower, YouTube star. That's a job description you can only find in Turkey. You might have heard of him, or you might be wondering who it is that I am talking about. I'll give you a little lowdown. He was a big-name mob boss in the 90s. He stood trial for murder, but got acquitted. He then fled the country when he was charged with everything from murder to racketeering, came back, served a sentence, and in 2008, he was arrested again for being a part of the deep state. But he was then later released and fled the country. Now, he started posting videos in 2021 first because he had some sort of a beef with Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu. Apparently, Soylu had guaranteed his safe return and all of his latest charges dropped, but he reneged on his promise. Well, Peker didn't take too kindly to that because Peker wasn't just a regular mob boss. See, he was connected to the highest names in the AKP government and started launching accusations of murder, racketeering, drug trafficking, money laundering for everybody. And I mean everybody. People we know, people we don't know. Now, the former prime minister's son, former interior minister, and this time against the former head of the Capital Markets Board, they've all been fingered. This isn't even the whole scope of the scandal. This one literally deserves its own long-form documentary. But I think what most people want to know, does this matter? Does all of this corruption scandal inside the AKP actually matter to the AKP base? Well, we'll ask exactly that to Edgar Şar, who will be on with us in just a moment. But let's do a recap of some of Peker's accusations.
Kıymetli dostlarım, kıymetli kardeşlerim, bildiğiniz üzere bir senedir...
Crime boss, YouTuber, and whistleblower. Sedat Peker started alleging government and mob connections over a year ago and went silent after releasing 10 videos. In his confessions, he accused the former Minister of Interior of racketeering, his son of murder, former Prime Minister's son of drug trafficking, private military company Sedat of supplying weapons to terror groups, and much more. His videos fell silent in June of last year, and many speculated if Peker was arrested or even killed. But soon after, Peker resurfaced on Twitter and said that he was in Dubai and was visited by the local police and said, "If I don't die, we will continue this story." Sedat Peker is now widely believed to be only tweeting under the pseudonym Deli Çavuş, or the Mad Sergeant. In October, Peker claimed that he had gotten a hold of explicit videos of North Cypriot politicians, from the Northern Cyprus hotelier, casino owner, and alleged mobster Halil Falyala. One of the videos in question was of Ersan Saner, the Prime Minister of Northern Cyprus, and after the video emerged, Saner was pressured to resign. Falyala, however, was shot dead in his armored vehicle the following February. Peker had alleged that Falyala and former Prime Minister Binali Yıldırım's son, Ekrem Yıldırım, were engaged in drug trafficking and the proceeds were being laundered through Falyala's casinos. This time, Peker came out of the woodwork accusing the former head of Capital Markets Board, Ali Fuat Taşkasanlıoğlu, and his sister, Erzurum MP Zehra Taşkasanlıoğlu, of soliciting a 12 million lira bribe from the Marka Holding CEO Mine Tozo Sinarin, in exchange for certain problems to disappear. Peker also accused Ali Fuat Taşkasanlıoğlu of having a stash of $180 million in his villa. Opposition coalition party İYİ Party chair Meral Akşener announced on Monday that every single party chapter in all provinces would be filing to request criminal charges against the accused.
And joining me now, Medyascope's politics extraordinaire, Edgar Şar. Edgar, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Murat.
No problem. Now, I have to apologize. I blew up your phone yesterday because I panicked when we were talking about Sedat Peker.
No, it's a pleasure for me to be with you.
Oh, my man. Yeah, I panicked because I didn't think anybody could do a better job of explaining Sedat Peker and how that relates to politics. So in the interest of that, let's get started. Now, let's start with perhaps something a little more speculative, but Edgar, Sedat Peker resurfaces every once in a while, goes dark. Resurfaces every once in a while, goes dark. Every time he comes back up, somebody's fingering somebody and airing dirty laundry. Where do you see this going in the future?
Well, we know that Sedat Peker is leader of an illegal and armed organization. Mm-hmm. And this organization has been very active since the 90s, actually. And his criminal and illegal activities, unfortunately, got him to an influential position in Turkish politics. And since then, he has been also sometime in prison, sometime free. And we know that since the failed coup attempt in 2016, he has been somehow within the ruling coalition, which is mainly composed of the nationalist MHP and the ruling AKP. And we also know how he was excluded from this coalition. It's all about, of course, there are some details, but it's mainly all about the contracting cake, which is also the reason of the economic crisis right now in Turkey.
Sorry.
And
terribly sorry to interrupt you. The contracting cake, I think you might want to expand on that.
Yeah, this is, well, actually, if you want to keep an authoritarian regime running, mm-hmm. You have to, give a portion to everyone who is, playing a part in that authoritarian game. Mm-hmm. And Sedat Peker has been one of the actors, if not the key actors, in this play. And because, especially after the loss in 2019 local elections, mm-hmm. There has been a big loss in the financial resources of the current ruling elite. And of course, this sooner or later, this would, cause a kind of fight between the actors. And of course, the story about Sedat Peker began with something completely unique. His house was raided, and then after he had to flee the country. And this is also how he started the fight against the AKP government, particularly some influential and prominent actors within the government, such as Süleyman Soylu, and also some other, leaders of some mafia groups or illegal groups. We know the story. The problem here is that unlike some other revelations about some corruption scandals, for example, in 2014, which was revealed by the Gülenists at that time, these revelations are very much different because it is coming from someone who has been just within the core of the ruling elite, and he is not hiding what he has himself done. He is admitting what he has done, the criminal activities of himself or his gang, his organization has engaged in, and he's revealing everything about a network of bribe, a series of illegal activities, including a corruption scandal. And the issue here is that the recent revelations are concerning some people from the army of advisors of President Erdoğan, whom we don't know actually, because this army is very big. There are plenty of advisors within the palace, who are very active in the policy making and also decision making mechanisms. And it's therefore not very much surprising, as much as I am concerned, that these people are also engaged in some illegal activities like networks of bribes or corruption scandals. So you asked where this can go to. Well, actually, the recent revelations are about people whom we don't know, whose names we have never heard, and whose names we have already forgotten, actually. So if the scandals of those relatively insignificant people are this big, and let's imagine the scandals that the bigger people in this network can be. So, and Sedat Peker has already made it clear that he will make the biggest revelations in 2 months' time, ahead of the elections. So I think it's very clear that his, bigger game is to topple the AKP government. So we will see if, how big his revelations will be. And what we are sure about is that he has a big, army. He has plenty of materials in that, and he will use them, with a good timing.
I see. The last thing that you said made my newsman senses tingle. Literally gave me chills because in 2 months, I think we're going to have our work cut out for us covering everything that he says. But now let's get the brass tacks here. He has said some damaging things, yes. But is Sedat Peker actually having an effect on the AKP voter base, or are we just in a bubble here? We would assume if a party that you and I voted for turned out to be riddled with corruption and racketeering, that would affect our voting choices, right? But does that ring true for AKP's solid electorate? What do you think?
Well, when we are, trying to answer this question, we may very well remember the December 2013 corruption scandal, which was at that time conducted by the Gülenists against the AKP, and which was a result of a power game between the AKP and the Gülenists. So at that time, Gülenists claimed that the AKP was sunk into corruption up to their ears, but on the other hand, they were, as Gülenists were very clean. Here we have, totally a different story. Here we have someone who is confessing his own crimes as well, just in order to persuade his listeners that what he is saying is accurate. So this is the first difference. And another difference from 2013 corruption scandal, I'm comparing these both because at that time, it was also ahead of another local elections, which was conducted at the end of March 2014. And the election results show that these corruption scandals actually played no role whatsoever. And AKP won the major cities, including Istanbul and Ankara. And so after that, many analysts came to the conclusion that corruption scandals play actually no role in voting behavior. But today is very different. That is the reason why I really compare these both incidences. At that time, there was a big economic crisis like we have today. Today, there is a big inflation problem, and people actually are searching for the reason and the responsible of this problem. So the corruption scandals, the networks of bribe, and any kind of financial, scandal that might be revealed by Sedat Peker or anyone else, can provide an answer to all these questions, whereby we are searching for the responsible people of this economic crisis. So we have to take this into consideration. Another thing, which is also very much important, is what the opposition will do. Because, the voting behavior, when we, talking about the voting behavior, and we should also see what the alternatives of the current ruling elite is doing with this corruption scandals. At that time in 2013 and 14, actually the opposition just took the scandals as given and attacked the government with all these scandals. But in fact, it was a power game between Gülenists and the AKP. But the opposition just, neglected it, in purpose, and attacked the government with the corruption scandals. However, in the eyes of the electorate, it was a weakness because by doing this, the opposition was only a passive party of a power game between Gülenists and the AKP. Whereas today, the opposition is approaching in a very cautious way to the revelations of Sedat Peker. And today, I think they are doing, very well in presenting themselves as an alternative to this ruling elite, as the future builders of a new Turkey where this kind of scandals will not be the case again. So this may play a role in the eyes of the electorate. If the opposition, does not only rely on the scandal, but can present itself as a viable alternative to the current ruling elite, then I think these revelations will play a role in turning even some loyal AKP voters to the opposition, or at least to the position of indecisive. Because at the end of the day, they are also very much negatively influenced by the current economic crisis. And these revelations provide an answer why we have to experience the current economic crisis and who is the responsible of this crisis.
I see. Edgar, this is why I blew up your phone, because you made sense of this. Edgar, thank you so much for taking the time. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much, Murat. And also I wish you and the members of the team the very best for Medyascope, Medyascope's new YouTube channel, Medyascope English. I'm sure you will do a great job.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Again, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And in the economy, power and gas prices get hiked in Turkey again, and it's getting to be a bit much. I speak from experience. Gas and power are going up again 20% this month, and in preparation for the winter months, and it's getting to be a fifth of minimum wage. Now, remember, there is a worldwide gas and power shortage right now, and in part due to the Russo-Ukrainian war. But on top of the gas prices, Turkey has been battling this currency crisis. So losing so much currency value and the inflation on top of that is really hurting the pockets. Now, inflation in Turkey is either 80% or 180%, depending on who you believe. Sure, minimum wage was hiked a couple of months ago to $5,500 mid-year to compensate for the crushing costs of living, but it looks like the cost of basic necessities have already begun to eat into what little gains the working class has made. Let's go to the details.
As the global natural gas prices continue to spike, Turkey isn't spared. But with the embattled currency and sky-high inflation, Turks feel the squeeze more than others. Natural gas for residential use has gotten a 20% hike this month. Within the last year, natural gas prices in Turkey have gone up 264%. And with the latest rounds of hikes in power has gone up 248%. Last April, a regular power bill at an average household that would have been 200 liras would now be 497 liras. And an average natural gas bill that would have been 200 liras last September is 528 liras today. Both of those bills make up approximately a fifth of minimum wage. In the last year alone, power bills have received 3 hikes, 80% in January, 15% in June, and 20% this month. Natural gas has gotten even more expensive with 4 hits to the consumers, seeing a 25% hike in January, 35% in April, 30% in June, and 20% this month. Industrial metering for natural gas and power is even more dire, at 50% for industrial zoned areas.
And in domestic news, gentrification. In Turkey, some love it, some hate it, but whether you like it or not, the government is going to bulldoze ahead with it. Now, in Turkey, the practice of knocking down or rebuilding old and dilapidated neighborhoods has a name: urban transformation. And it used to be that it was actually a very popular thing. Because in Turkey, you don't just get strong-armed or priced out if you're a poor resident. If you own the home, they move you out, you get rent assistance until the new building is built, and then you move back in. So what's so terrible about that? Well, at least that's what used to happen. You didn't used to get strong-armed, but now that's all changed. The residents of Tokaköy district in Istanbul are literally being evicted from their homes against their wills because they refuse the government's meager 1,900 lira rent assistance, which doesn't even come close to covering rent in Istanbul. But the AKP government doesn't seem too impressed by their civil disobedience because the riot police have been called and they have been pepper spraying and dispersing crowds of protesters who don't want to leave their homes. Let's go to the video.
Adalet yok mu burada? Yok mu? Yok. Yok mu burada adalet? Yok mu? Yeter artık, yeter! Ölmek yok! Ölmek var! Ölmek yok! Evlerini vermek istemeyenler evlerini...
And if you're interested in seeing the full video, the link is available in the description box down below, so go ahead and give it a click. And folks, this one is a heartbreaking story. The remains of a young man killed in the anti-terror operations back in 2015 and 2016 were just delivered to his father this week in nothing more than a box 8 years later. Back in 2015, the government ran a massive anti-terror campaign in the Hakkari district, Diyarbakır province. Now, Diyarbakır province is a majority Kurdish province, and back in 2015, the PKK, considered a terrorist organization by Turkey and a dozen more countries, made an attempt to establish a presence in the city. What followed was a massive armed conflict between security forces and the organization, and the city turned into a literal war zone. Buildings were torn, streets were carved with hail of bullets, and according to government numbers, hundreds of security personnel and thousands of PKK separatists were killed. Among the maelstrom, a young man was caught in the crossfire and consequently killed. No evidence at all to indicate that he took any part in the hostilities. But this week, his body, which was kept by the security forces for years, was finally delivered to his father after nothing of him was left but bones in a box.
The remains of Hakan Arslan have been returned to his father after 7 years. Arslan was killed in the operations known as Hendek Barakat, which took place after a curfew declared in December 2015 in the central district of Diyarbakir. His father, Ali Reza Arslan, spoke to Medyascope after burying the bones and hosting the funeral. Arslan, who stated that his son even served in the Turkish armed forces, learned about his son's demise during the urban battle in Sur. Our family has been suffering for 7 years now. First, we could not find our son's remains. Then, we received them in a box. The most painful moment of these 7 years was yesterday, as we received our son. Which holy book approves returning the body of a 28-year-old young man to his family in a box? They said to me, "There you go. Here's your son," as they gave me the box. The Bar Association of Diyarbakir has filed a report to the Council of Judges and Prosecutors about the delivery of the remains. The Bar Association demanded that the officials who gave Arslan's remains to the family in the manner that they did to be charged with malpractice and desecrating the memory of a person. Head of the Diyarbakir Bar Association, Nahi Teren, commented to Medyascope, "What disturbs us and what we object to in this case is the manner in which the remains were given to the family after identification. Neither humanitarian law, nor our values and beliefs as a society, allows giving the remains of a child to his parents in this manner. Normally, the respective municipality bodies and health organizations are called upon to proceed with the normal funeral procedures. You cannot give away bones like they are some simple objects in a box. This is a delicate issue both judicially and on a religious and traditional level. Regardless of whom it may be, this is not the right approach."
And folks, if you follow the show, you might remember that we covered this last week. Singer Gülşen has been released and is awaiting trial under house arrest. Now, just a refresher, Gülşen was placed under arrest last week when officers picked her up from her home in Istanbul. This all happened after a video of her joking about Imam Hatip students started doing the rounds on social media. Gülşen had jokingly said about a friend, "He's from Imam Hatip, that's why he's perverted." Imam Hatips are, of course, government vocational schools that train imams. President Erdoğan is famously a graduate of these schools. Gülşen was sent to jail first, where she was to await trial, but the court ruled that she can be held under house arrest until her trial. This, of course, is just another example of how speech in Turkey can cost you dearly. So in Turkey, you do have to be careful about what you say and who you say it about. And tonight, we'll end on this, folks. Journalist Kathleen and Medyascope editor-in-chief Gülşen Çakır had a sit-down to discuss if the West would actually tip the scales in the upcoming elections. Now, you would think that Western diplomats would put their weight behind the opposition, seeing that President Erdoğan has had a rocky relationship with the West. But Kathleen doesn't necessarily agree. Perhaps the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. Let's get a quick snippet.
Burada şöyle bir paradoksal bir durum yok mu? Muhalefetin içerisinde birçok kişi de Erdoğan her şeyi yapmak isteyebilir ama Batı buna izin vermez gibi bir yaklaşım var.
Öyle bir Batı yok.
Yok değil mi?
Öyle bir Batı yok. Hiç.
Yani tamamen Türkiye kendi kaderine terk etmiş.
Tabii ki. Yani ilk defa Türkiye halkı, Türkiye'deki siyaset sınıfı Batı'dan falan da öyle destek almadan, Batı'nın oluruyla değil,
hatta Batı'ya rağmen
ve hatta bir ölçüde Batı'ya rağmen kendi kaderini çizmek ve ülkeyi Batı'ya rağmen, bir kez daha Batı'ya rağmen demokratikleşme yoluna sokmak üzere.
And with that, that's it for us on This Week in Turkey. I have Murat Türsan. A special thanks to Mehmet Tanverdi for news text and Kathleen Phelps for voiceovers. And if you haven't done so already, folks, please consider subscribing to the channel and support us on Patreon if you can. And thank you for joining us.